So we have Jack Gilmore. Thanks for giving a talk. Go ahead.
Cool. Thanks, Gala. Yeah, if you're not here for building mapping waste the open way, you're in the wrong place. Hope you're all settled in after lunch, though. Um, just a quick bit before we get into the presentation, I'll introduce myself. Hello, I'm Jack Gilmore. I'm originally from Aberdeen, so about an hour up the road, but I live in Arbroath, so near to Dundee, about half an hour away. Uh, in my day job, I don't map, unfortunately. I'm a senior platform engineer for the NHS. But I do get to do lots of cool kind of data and open data stuff in my spare time. I'm the co-founder of Open Data Scotland. I'm the co-founder of Dundee Data Meetup in the local area that also runs out of Aberdeen University. I've also been recognised quite recently for being for my services to the open data community with Open UK's 2025 Data Leader honorees at the start of the year. Some fun facts about me include I like coffee and I like Lego, and I've got a lot of Lego, and I've been mapping since June 2020, so probably quite a newbie compared to some of the veteran mappers in the room. Just before we get started, some jargon busting and terminology here. I may refer to household waste recycling centres as just HWRCs. That's the same as like a recycling centre or the tip, or, well, I mean, they can vary, but that's generally kind of the same kind of terminology. I might refer to local authorities, or if you're from further afield, something like a municipal administration as a council for shorthand. And you may not have heard of Wikidata before, so if you don't know what Wikidata is, well, first of all, I would encourage you to find out more about it. But to kind of shorten it down, it is a structured open knowledge base that can be linked to Wikidata and OSM. As I said, I've only been mapping since June 2020. A lot has changed since then. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about software development since then. A lot has changed in the software development world. A lot has changed in the mapping world. And OpenWasteMap was my first ever OpenStreetMap project. So I probably got a lot wrong. And there's probably still a lot that's wrong with it. But please forgive me, I am learning. And as always, pull requests are welcome. So if I've done something wrong and you want to fix it, you can come along and do that. So the problem that we faced when it came to building OpenWasteMap in the first place was there was no single consistent source for UK waste and HWRC data. So that means that it was really difficult sometimes for people to answer the question. I have X thing, like a car battery, say, for example, and I live at Y postcode. Where do I get rid of this? How do I get rid of this responsibly? We found when we were doing research that each local authority publishes information differently. It's pretty much all static info on their websites. There's no kind of data set or anything like that where you can see where you can get rid of things. And even when you looked at those council websites, all the information was incomplete. Well, not all the information. A lot of the information was complete or incomplete or outdated, which meant that sometimes you could turn up to a recycling centre and say, hey, I want to get rid of this. And they would say, oh, we don't accept that anymore, or we only collect those on like the second Wednesday of the month or something random like that. So yeah, it made it difficult for the public to find accurate location-based disposal info, and because it was all static information on websites, it meant that it was pretty difficult for it to be machine readable as a data set, which limits reuse in apps, maps, and research. So how can we fix this? This is when I kind of discovered OpenStreetMap as a bit of a gateway drug, I think, into open data. If you've been to Jez's talk yesterday about mapping, and he mentioned infecting people with the mapping bug, I would say this definitely is where I got infected with the mapping bug, and he's responsible for that because Jez was at the hackathon where I built this. We started looking at it and thinking, well, we should have data that should answer the question in the previous slide quite clearly, regardless of where you live within the UK. We knew that, as I said in the previous slide, councils already publish this information, but it's in inconsistent formats. So we thought, hey, well, we can use open data and open mapping to unify it, which is where OpenStreetMap and Wikidata came along. we thought, well, OpenStreetMap can offer a kind of shared community maintained base of data. There was a lot of data already in there that we could use and update and improve. And through the Civic Tech project that we used to build this at a hackathon, well, 2 hackathons actually, we were able to make it useful for everybody and not just data experts or not just people who knew where to find the data on council websites. So we started to get building. We started building this at a Code the City Hack weekend in Aberdeen, and the goal was basically to map recycling centres across the UK. The idea being that we could build something that's open, reusable, and public facing, so it wasn't hidden behind, in council websites or anything like that, and it was easy to search. We were able to use OpenStreetMap and Wikidata as the foundation. We also discovered that some recycling centres were already listed as Wikidata entries, and we figured they would be a good idea to import them all into there as well. So we were able to do that. So we were able to find that there was 3 data sets mainly in the UK for waste carriers and disposal sites, basically. There was one for England, one for Wales, and one for Scotland, which was a bit of a pain that it was split into the different devolutions, but we were able to use them quite easily to build Wikidata quick statements to import them into Wikidata. So that kind of at least gave us a kind of base target estimation of about 1,000 recycling centres that we were able to expect to be on OpenStreetMap. We were then doing some research with the OpenStreetMap wiki to see what existing standards were out there for recycling centers. So rather than making up our own standard and following the N+1 problem when it comes to standards, we looked at what was already there, and there was already a pretty well-established tagging base that we were able to use for that. There were some challenges, but I'll discuss those in a couple of slides. But we pretty much use mostly existing tag patterns rather than having to create our own. So then we built the map. We used Leaflet.js for the front end, which I'd used a couple of times before. I worked for a local authority at the time and had just revamped their mapping section on the website, so I figured that was a pretty good tool to do that. And then that was in conjunction with a backend, which I wrote in .NET, which was maybe good for me because that was my programming language de jure at the time. I know a lot of people prefer, Python for open source projects, so there's maybe an opportunity to rewrite there because this project has been sitting dormant for a couple of years now. I know a lot of people refer to .NET as Microsoft Java, but it is an open language now since the adoption of .NET Core, so it's open source at the end of the day. We queried Overpass to get the data, and it lives in a kind of primitive cache. I say primitive because it is literally just a SQL server at the moment. This probably could be improved on a lot, but this is when I was like two years out of uni, so it wasn't that good when it came to programming yet, I would say. We geocoded using postcodes.io to match you to a local authority, so we knew basically when you put in your postcode which recycling centres were in your area. And then we were able to link those recycling centres to Wikidata to attach and enrich the existing information that's in OpenStreetMap. And then the result that we ended up with was a fast and usable map that anyone can explore. So it looks like this. You can go and visit it yourself actually at openwastemap.uk, and it'll load 600 odd pins when you load up the website to start off with, so apologies, it is a bit slow. But yeah, the idea is you can stick in your postcode there up in the top left and what waste you want to get rid of, so say car batteries in this case. You'll see that it'll then highlight in green the recycling centres within your local authority area that you can then dispose of that waste, and the ones that you can't, it'll keep highlighting them in blue, and they'll give you a list on the left hand side there basically of those. And then a couple of slides in, you can then click on those recycling centres and find out more information on it based off the OpenStreetMap data. So it'll give you the address. So for example, here's my local one in Arbroath. You can expand and see where the opening hours are and what materials are accepted. And if somebody has said that a certain material is not accepted explicitly, that'll show up with a nice red X as well. So it's pretty kind of verbose in telling you what you can access and what you can't. Um, so what was the point? Why did we do this, and what kind of differences have we seen from it? We've seen a nice kind of increase in coverage across the UK of recycling centres that have been mapped or that have been existingly mapped or have been improved in their tagging. I think there's about 600 of them that are on the map now, but there is still that target of about 1,000 that we'd like to put in at some point. By adding them, we've improved consistency in tagging of the naming of the waste sites, and we were able to examine the existing sites that were there and identify any gaps in the data. So sometimes people had just plotted the recycling center, but they hadn't necessarily actually said what you could dispose of there. We were able to spark collaboration between mappers, the civic tech community, and councils. So when we were at the two hackathons we were developing this, there were representatives from the OpenStreetMap community, representatives from civic tech up in Aberdeen, and there were representatives from local authorities. So it was a real kind of good mix of people collaboratively working together over the course of 2 weekends and outside of those 2 weekends to build this. I think, in my opinion, it really demonstrated the reuse of OSM and Wikidata for public benefit. But it didn't come without its challenges. This project was built on a big assumption that local authority residency means right of access, which is really simple up here in Scotland when we've got 32 local authorities and it's a flat kind of structure. We don't have upper tier and lower tier local authorities. And then I started to get messages and people filing issues saying, hey, I live in this, in this kind of unitary authority, and actually I can go outside my local authority to someone else's local authority to get rid of my waste, or which in fact I discovered at the weekend you can do in Angus as well. If you live in Montefiore and Sidlow, or you can go through to Dundee Council and use their recycling centres apparently. So my whole kind of assumption system has broken apart a bit, and I need to explore how to improve that. There's different rules for commercial access as well. So if you've got a commercial VAT, if you've got a commercial business and you want to get rid of some waste, 9 times out of 10, I think you can't really just like rock up to a recycling center and get rid of it without somebody asking questions and getting you to pay for a permit. And at the moment, we're also matching residency based off of an exact keyword match for the local authority. And that means that if somebody hasn't said what local authority or recycling center exists in, you get that sad face situation down at the bottom right there on one of our reports on the website where it's not been mapped correctly to our local authority. There's other gaps in the data as well. So like I said, there's not every HWRC is mapped or fully tagged correctly in OSM. The tagging complexity, there's different opinions in the community as to how to facilitate, how to represent facilities, down to should we be mapping individual skips and what you can put in those skips, down to what different waste types mean as well. Sustainability, maintaining and updating the data set over time is a struggle as well, especially if I'm kind of one person that's only looking after this project. So I'd like to encourage kind of ongoing mapper and council participation, of which I mentioned in one of the later slides as well. Also as well, I like to start projects and then abandon them and go on to other things. So you'll see by this lovely commit graph here that there was a flurry of activity earlier on in like 2021, 2022. And since then, the only activity that's been on this repository has basically been me like bumping it to keep it alive or saying thank you to the sponsors. So as I said at the beginning, PR is welcome. I'd love to get more people on board. Or do I? In the ad, this is built pre-AI, kind of pre-big AI age. Should I just assign Copilot to do all the work for me now? No, I would rather get volunteers involved as well, with real subject matter experts, I reckon, to get involved in this. So when it comes to next steps, I would say I'd like to expand it to include more places that you can get rid of waste. Recycling centers aren't the only places you can get rid of waste, and often they're not accessible to people who don't use cars. So if you use public transport, you're not exactly going to be able to take a load of stuff with you, and they're not going to accept you rocking up on foot for it. So you've got your bring sites, which is essentially the same as your glass bottle bins, etc., that you get usually like at the back of supermarket car parks and the likes and running about. Reuse centers as well. So as well, people just getting rid of stuff because it's waste and they want it to be recycled. People want stuff to be reused as well. They want to donate it for that. and reverse vending machines as well, which I know is maybe a bit more of a controversial situation in the UK and Scotland at the moment with bottle return schemes. But it would be nice to at least know how to tag them when they're of more widespread use. One of our sponsors of the website, Disposal, have created an open free R standard for mapping recycling centres, which we've not adopted yet because I've not had time to, which is the classic excuse. So I'd like to do that. And to be able to validate against existing data sets that are there. So closing the feedback loop by looking at the existing waste carrier data sets that are there, making sure that all marries up properly. And by doing that, we can also probably, I reckon, work with with government, both local and national, to make sure that they're ideally using the same standards as we're wanting to adopt as well. And at the end of the day, could it potentially reduce things like fly tipping? Who knows? It would be a welcome thing to see. So yeah, just to wrap up, I would encourage you to try it out yourself, and if you want to get involved, please speak to me or dive in with the project that's there. And also a huge thanks to Your Disposal, who have sponsored the site for 6 years now and paid the domain registration and web hosting fees. So that's me. I think I've got some time for some questions. So yeah, I'll hand over to the audience if anybody has anything they want to say. Anybody? I think we need to pass the mic around first. It's right behind you.
Thanks. I love a tip, so this is great.
Yeah.
I was visiting a tip the other week in Bristol, and so there's nothing mapped in Bristol at all. Do you know? Is that just an authority issue or?
I mean, generally we don't find that it's the local authorities that map them. So it probably is just relying on somebody to crowdsource mapping the information. So if it's not there, it's just because somebody hasn't.
And what's what? Sorry, maybe I wasn't paying attention. But is there a specific? Is it just the tagging of the?
Yeah, so there's a tagging rule that we use in our overpass query to pick them up, and it's generally marking ownership as municipal. Basically, we would see as basically a tip that belongs to a local authority that anybody who's a citizen in that area can access. But like I've said, that's an assumption that that's the case.
I can fix that. I can fix that.
Yeah, it is. I'll see if I can make more prominent on the website what the required tagging is, but it is generally just a case of pointing what the ownership is. That does come with its struggles as well, because quite a lot, well, not a lot, but some recycling centres, the operation of them is outsourced to private companies. So it's a question about who actually owns them, and should we be using the ownership tag, or should we maybe be looking for more of an access tag kind of schema for managing that?
We had one up there, and then I'll come back.
Thank you very much. Well, I love a dump as well. It's interesting. I think the youth closer, the youth call them recycling centres, and I kind of use them a fair bit. And the one web link that I find most useful is booking, because they've all moved to book a slot, which and I don't know if you make that the website link, it would be.
I think that would be a good shout, yeah, to add a booking link on there. I mean, I know especially that there are tags for that on OpenStreetMap, so yeah, we should definitely be looking for that and adding that into that little pop-up there to indicate whether you actually need to book or not.
And I have noticed, and this is not a statement against the project, but certainly in the Edinburgh area, the supermarkets now don't have a lot of the bottle schemes have gone.
All right.
Now they've gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that was after COVID, because they thought, we can't have all the people gathering. And also due to the booking schemes, I think there's less people using the dumps. So it's not been good.
Yeah, I don't have data to back that up, but I have seen, anecdotally that there have been cases a lot of the time where people have seen, local authority areas have seen a rise in fly tipping, unfortunately, due to requiring booking, which is essentially putting a barrier in place. So, yeah, I'm not I'm not going to comment on that from a political standpoint, but it's not, obviously more flag tipping is not great. I'll take another question.
Hi there, thank you. It's a brilliant map. I was just wondering, have you ever considered talking to like your local MP or the Green Party or anything like that, just to let them know that something like this is around, because they've probably just never seen it.
No, as with a lot of my projects, I'm terrible at self-promotion. So yeah, definitely sounds like a good idea that I should get in touch with some local politicians and make them aware that that it's there. Yeah, good shout. Thanks.
Hello, my local authority, Shropshire Council, introduced a booking scheme at the end of last year, and then promptly abandoned it a few months later, because personally I never found it a problem, because you could go online, book a slot for a time when you could get there, because it takes sort of 20 minutes to drive to any of them. So it worked fine for me, but they have abandoned it. But apparently they are now very, very strict on where you live.
Yeah, that's something I guess we maybe also need to consider in terms of the tagging scheme is access requirements in terms of, do you actually need to provide identification to prove where you live, whether that's by handing over your driving license or a bill or a council tax bill or whatever. I guess I would also maybe advise caution in mapping that, because I guess that could also show where there are recycling centres that are a bit more lax in their restrictions and don't really care about where people are coming from to dump their waste. But, it's pros and cons, I guess. Yeah.
Cool. This is really cool, and I think like everyone here, I love bins as well. I guess I have two things. So, yeah, has there been any like engagement with local authorities and any kind of like interest in them actually being able to use Wikidata or OSM to basically master their data, because they need to publish all this information somewhere anyway. Well, they should be publishing all this stuff openly, so can they just directly put it on Wikidata?
Easy answer to that is no local authority is engaged with me, but if anybody does want to engage with me on it that works at a local authority or has a contact at a local authority, by all means, please, I would encourage them to get in touch.
And how does this overlap at all into like bin collections? Because there's I think a lot of interest in like scraping data for like bin collections, so you can know when your bin's being collected.
So it doesn't have anything to do with bin collections, as in there's no data on there that we display on that. I don't know if that is something that we can put on OpenStreetMap or how it would work. But I would be interested to find out as well, as someone who has also written his own bin collection app for his local authority, because I don't like the UX for my local authority for getting the bin calendar. So yeah, there's definitely scope to examine that as well.
Thank you very much for the talk.
Thank you.
Obviously, you mentioned earlier about potential different access for different vehicles, but I just had a quick look on the website that it doesn't list those access tags. So my local recycling centre, you can't walk there. They don't accept walk-ins. You need to have a car, but then at the same time, they don't accept vehicles with trailers either. So is that something that could be expanded on for the website at all?
Yes, definitely. It's something that could be added there. Yeah,
excellent.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. So I'm from overseas. I could see something like this being hugely useful in other places. So specifically, I live in Australia. Any plans to expand this, or is there open code or the ability to kind of contribute or get involved from other geographies?
Yeah, it's an open source project, so PRs and forks are welcome. It is mainly kind of targeted as a UK based only project, but I don't see any reason why you couldn't fork it and make an Australia version if you wanted to. It is mostly based off of overpass query for the UK area. So in theory, thinking back to code that I wrote like 4 years ago, you should just have to swap out basically what area you're searching for, and provided that the tagging is a similar convention, then you should be able to reuse it quite easily.
Any more questions?
Oh, I've not escaped.
Are you aware of the existence of Map Complete and the waste layer within it? It's a more generic web app that focuses on configuring different layers and having overpass layers, overpass queries corresponding with them to achieve similar results. So it might be an interesting reference to also.
Is that Map Complete, you said?
Map Complete, yes.
Yeah. I wasn't aware of it, so I'll definitely have to have a look into it. Yeah, I was just thinking the other day there, if there's something like Street Complete where I could add a quest for people to properly tag recycling centers. So yeah.
Yeah, Map Complete.
Awesome, thank you. Got another one down here.
Okay, this is a really niche UK-specific question, but do you show which supermarkets accept plastic bags?
No, not at the moment. No, it is just recycling centers. So there's nothing to do with supermarkets or bring sites or recycling bins at the back of supermarket car parks. So yeah, that's another one actually to add, I guess, which I think has become more prominent in the last couple of years. So
because that's something that in the UK is not collected by local authorities, but by supermarkets for some reason.
Good question.
And then,
yeah,
that's like
I wonder
if you want to recycle that, you have to find a nearby supermarket that accepts them, which can actually be quite hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Australia, I believe, does that too. But actually, yeah, the individual supermarkets will have their list on their website, but it's wrong. Lots of places where you go, and then they've taken them away.
Yeah.
So there's the data set.
Open data, yeah. Yeah, OpenStreetMap would be a good way to crowdsource that and be reliable rather than, supermarkets just dumping out a list that's then out of date. Yeah, so good shout. Yeah.
Where?
Sorry, you want to say? Pass me.
Sorry.
In my part of the UK, recycling bins where you used to have the green bottle bank, the brown bottle bank, etc., have all disappeared because that sort of waste is now collected as part of the household recycling collection once a fortnight. They're seen as no longer needed.
It's funny that you say that because my local authority, Angus, has gone the opposite way where they used to collect glass and now it's expected that if you want to get rid of it, you have to basically go to these bins that are at the back of your supermarket car park to get rid of them. So yeah, that's an interesting thing, I guess, an interesting quirk across different local authorities in the UK is, There's no standardization as to, whether something's collected in a bin or whether you've got to get rid of it yourself or if it's accepted at all. Like I know, for example, in my local authority, again, you have to pay a permit for your garden waste because it's not a statutory requirement in Scotland for the local authorities to pick up garden waste. So you either, in some local authorities, you pay a permit for it. Some local authorities are nice and don't require you to pay a permit for it, and then some don't even bother to accept it at all, including at recycling centres as well. So yeah, there's a real disparity across the UK and local authorities as to what you can get rid of and where. So I guess that's another thing to maybe consider creating a data set of is how that works.
Okay, thanks everyone, and thank you, Jack, for a really great talk.
Thank you.